Have you ever played a game or read a story where something just seems to float there, defying gravity?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I actually had something like that happen in a game just a few weeks ago.
Really?
Yeah, we were playing, and we came across this, sunken temple.
Okay.
And we had to, swim into the central chamber. And as we got in there, there's this treasure chest just floating in the water.
Oh.
No chains, no supports, nothing. It was really creepy.
Yeah, that is a great example of what we're talking about today. It's all about floating items and how to use those in D&D to make your games a little bit more magical, a little bit more mysterious.
Yeah.
We are looking at an article from LitRPG Reads.
Oh, okay.
It's called How to Use Floating Items to Enhance Puzzles, Rewards, and Mysteries in D&D.
Cool.
And it is by Paul Bello.
Ah, sounds interesting.
Yeah, and when you think about it,
Yeah.
when you see something floating, it just kind of catches your eye.
Oh, definitely. It's
Yeah.
instantly, something's up.
Yeah, it makes you question the laws of the world that you're in.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay, is there magic involved? Is this some kind of a trick?
Yeah, or is there something we're not seeing?
Right, yeah.
Exactly.
That has a whole other level to it.
And, this article points out that floating items can be more than just cool visuals.
Oh, for sure.
You can use them in the game mechanics in really interesting ways.
Yeah.
So think about it. Imagine a puzzle where you have to manipulate a series of platforms.
Okay.
But these platforms are floating.
Interesting.
And so to get to this hidden doorway, you've got to figure out how to get these platforms to move around, and
So they're not just static, they're
they could rise and fall, they could change positions, they could disappear and reappear.
oh, wow.
know?
So it's like a dynamic puzzle.
Right.
That's awesome.
And
Yeah.
to make it even more interesting, you could add some environmental hazards.
Imagine gusts of wind that are kind of pushing these platforms around. Or maybe there are magical traps,
Oh, that'd be cool.
that go off if you step on the wrong platform at the wrong time.
Yeah, so it's not just solving a puzzle, it's you're actually interacting with the environment.
Exactly.
That's awesome.
And the article also talks about how you can use floating items as rewards.
As reward.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So it gives the example of the celestial chalice,
Okay.
and it describes it as this radiant cup that just kind of floats in the air,
Uh-huh.
and it emanates healing energy.
Okay.
And so it's not just this powerful item.
Right.
It's a visual symbol of what the players have accomplished. It's a treasure that sets them apart from other adventurers.
Right, because anybody can get a healing potion, but a floating chalice. That's,
Yes. Yeah, it's special.
That's cool.
But it's not all about rewards.
Right.
Remember that treasure chest you mentioned?
Uh-huh.
The article talks about how you can also use floating items as antagonists.
As antagonists.
Like enemies.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Imagine a sentient floating sword
Yeah.
that is guarding a tomb or a cursed mask that just kind of floats around ominously
Yeah.
and forces those who gaze upon it to confront their deepest fears.
That's terrifying.
Yeah, I like it.
So, we think about antagonists, we often think about creatures or powerful villains.
Yeah,
But a floating item can be just as intimidating,
for sure.
especially when you give it a personality and motives of its own. If you have an object that's moving on its own,
Yeah.
it's you don't know why it's doing that.
Right.
It just seems to have a will of its own.
It's is it haunted? Is it cursed? What's going on?
And that can really get under a player's skin.
It would get under mine, for sure.
Yeah, and make them really kind of question what's going on in this world.
Yeah, definitely.
So there's a lot of potential there for floating items to be more than just a visual.
More than just set dressing.
Right.
Yeah.
They can be actual active participants in the story.
Cool. I like it.
And the article emphasizes that these items shouldn't just be props.
Yeah.
They should have a history, a purpose,
Right.
a reason for being there.
Makes sense.
So instead of just saying, oh, there's a floating orb in the corner,
Mm-hmm.
give it some context.
Right.
Maybe it's a remnant of a lost civilization,
Okay.
pulsing with residual magic.
I like that.
Or maybe it's a celestial artifact
Mm.
that's charting the movements of the stars.
Cool.
There's all sorts of possibilities there.
Definitely.
And don't be afraid to go beyond just the visual.
Okay.
Describe the hum of energy that emanates from that orb.
Yeah.
Or tell your players they feel a tingling sensation when they get close,
Okay.
like static electricity.
Ooh, that's creepy.
Right.
Yeah.
You want to engage their senses. You want to make them feel like they're really there,
Yeah.
experiencing this impossible object.
That's cool.
And so once you've established what it is,
Yeah.
then you can move on to the why.
Right. The why.
Why is this thing floating?
Exactly.
Who created it?
Yeah.
What was its purpose?
Mhm.
You know, so maybe that floating sword wasn't always a weapon.
Okay.
Maybe it was once a ceremonial blade
Uh-huh.
used by an ancient king to command the winds.
Ooh.
And now it's cursed,
Okay.
trapped between the material and ethereal planes,
Interesting.
you know, forever searching for its lost master.
So it's like a tragic backstory
Right.
for this sword.
Ooh, exactly.
Wow.
I like that. And you can even tie these floating items
Yeah.
into current events in your campaign.
Oh, okay.
So let's say there's a prophecy
Mhm.
about a celestial alignment
Okay.
that's going to unleash this powerful force.
Right.
What if that floating orb that we talked about
Yeah.
is actually a key to controlling that force?
Ooh. So it becomes like a major plot point.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's cool.
Suddenly, this seemingly innocuous object becomes this focal point of the story,
Mhm.
a target for both heroes and villains.
Right.
And it raises the stakes and adds a whole new layer of intrigue to your campaign.
That's awesome. I really like that idea.
Yeah, and you know, and this is something that I think is important to remember is that
Yeah.
the article talks about how we should think beyond the typical floating items.
Oh.
You know, we tend to picture swords,
Yeah.
orbs, treasure chests.
Hmm.
But what about something more unusual,
Okay.
like a floating tapestry
Hmm.
that depicts scenes from the future,
Oh, that's cool.
or a floating cauldron
Okay.
that's constantly bubbling with a strange iridescent liquid?
That's creepy.
Right?
I like it.
Maybe it grants wishes, or maybe it's a portal to another dimension.
Mm.
You know, so don't limit yourself.
Right.
The more creative you get with these floating items,
Yeah,
the more memorable they're going to be for your players.
for sure.
And here's something I thought was really interesting. The article suggests letting the players contribute to the story of these floating items.
Ooh, that's a good idea.
So don't just tell them what they are and how they work.
Right.
Ask them questions.
Okay.
What do they think this object is?
Uh-huh.
What could it be used for?
Mm-hmm.
You know, so instead of just dictating every detail,
Yeah.
give them the freedom to interpret and interact with these objects in their own way.
Oh, that's cool.
And maybe they'll come up with uses for it
Mm-hmm.
that you never even considered,
Exactly.
you know? And it's a great way to encourage creativity
Yeah.
and collaboration at the table.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And it turns the game into a true partnership
Yeah.
between the dungeon master and the players,
Right.
where everyone is contributing to the narrative.
That's awesome.
And the article gives some guidelines for how to do this effectively.
Okay.
It suggests focusing on the visual design of these items.
Right.
How do they look?
Mm.
How do they move?
Yeah.
What kind of energy do they emanate? So like, for example, that floating sword.
Uh-huh.
Instead of just describing it as a sword,
Right.
tell your players it's wreathed in spectral flames.
Ooh.
The blade seems to shift and shimmer
Okay.
as if it's made of pure energy,
Mm-hmm.
and when it moves,
Yeah.
it leaves a trail of ghostly light in its wake.
Wow, that sounds awesome.
Right.
Yeah.
So you've taken this familiar object,
Uh-huh.
you've made it something truly extraordinary,
Right.
and it captures the players' imaginations.
Yeah.
It makes them want to learn more about it,
For sure.
about its powers, about its history.
Absolutely.
So it's really about striking that perfect balance
Yeah.
between providing information and sparking curiosity.
Right.
You want to give your players enough to get them hooked,
Yeah.
but you also want to leave room for them to fill in the blanks
Mhm.
with their own imagination.
Right.
And that's where the real magic happens.
Yeah,
Is when you allow your players to co-create the story. You create this more immersive, engaging, and memorable experience
That's what it's all about.
for everyone involved.
I love it.
And, you know, we've talked a lot about the visual aspects of floating items.
Yeah.
The article also stresses the importance of sound.
Oh, sound for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sound can be just as powerful as sight in creating a sense of wonder and mystery.
Absolutely.
So, like, imagine that floating orb we discussed earlier.
Okay.
Instead of just saying it glows,
Yeah.
tell your players that it emits this low humming sound,
Uh-huh.
and the pitch rises and falls as it spins,
Okay.
almost like it's breathing. And that humming resonates with the very walls of the chamber,
Wow.
creating this eerie, unsettling atmosphere.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Right.
Like, it's alive.
It's these subtle details that really bring the scene to life
Mm,
and make it feel more real, more immersive.
definitely. interesting.
The article gives a fantastic example.
Okay.
Imagine a floating treasure chest,
Uh-huh.
but instead of the typical metallic clang when it opens,
Right.
it emits a sound like wind chimes.
Ooh.
Each note perfectly tuned to a specific magical frequency.
Whoa.
So it's no longer just a container for loot, it's a musical instrument,
That's really cool.
a magical artifact that hints at a deeper, more mysterious purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And think about the implications for gameplay.
Okay.
What if those musical notes could be used to unlock a hidden door or activate a powerful spell?
Okay.
Suddenly the players aren't just collecting treasure,
Right?
they're collecting clues,
Uh-huh.
pieces of a larger puzzle that they have to figure out.
That's awesome.
This is what I love about incorporating sound into your descriptions of these floating items.
Yeah.
It adds another layer of depth and complexity to your world,
Mm-hmm.
and it opens up all sorts of creative possibilities for gameplay.
Absolutely.
It's about making your players feel like they're not just watching the story unfold,
Right.
they're actively participating in it,
Yeah.
using their senses to uncover its secrets
Mhm.
and solve its mysteries.
That's really cool.
And we've talked about sight, we've talked about sound.
Mhm.
What about touch?
Touch, yeah.
How to make these floating items
Right.
feel real,
Uh-huh.
tactile.
Good question.
That's where texture comes in.
Okay.
So instead of just saying the orb is smooth,
Yeah.
describe the coolness of the polished crystal,
Uh-huh.
the way it seems to almost hum with energy beneath your fingertips,
Okay.
or that floating sword.
Yeah.
Imagine describing the roughness of the hilt,
Mm.
the way the leather wraps around your hand,
Yeah.
worn smooth from centuries of use.
I like it.
You're creating a sense of weight and solidity,
Right.
even though the object is defying gravity.
Yeah.
It's that contrast between the familiar and the extraordinary
Mm-hmm.
that makes it so compelling.
I agree.
And this makes me think about the article's suggestion of incorporating temperature into our descriptions.
Temperature. Okay.
Like, what if that floating treasure chest radiated a subtle heat, hinting at the magical power contained within?
Oh, that's cool.
Or imagine a floating mask that feels icy cold to the touch,
Okay.
as if it's drawing the warmth from your very soul.
That's creepy.
These details can really enhance the player's experience,
Right.
make them feel like they're truly interacting with these objects.
Yeah, definitely.
And it can also be a great way to foreshadow events or hint at an object's true nature.
How interesting.
The article gives a great example of this with a floating amulet.
Okay.
It appears to be made of ordinary stone,
Uh-huh.
but when a player touches it, it feels strangely warm
Okay.
and pulsates with a faint heartbeat.
Ooh, that's creepy.
And it turns out the amulet contains the soul of a trapped sorcerer.
Oh, wow.
You can see how a seemingly simple detail like temperature
Yeah.
can add a whole new layer of intrigue and mystery
Right.
to the object,
For sure.
making the players question its origins and purpose.
Absolutely.
And it's not just about the physical sensations. The article also encourages us to think about the emotional impact of these floating items.
Oh, the emotional impact.
How do they make the players feel?
That's interesting.
Yeah. And that's where symbolism comes in.
Okay.
So like a floating sword
Yeah.
can represent more than just a weapon.
Mm-hmm.
It can be a symbol of power,
Mm-hmm.
authority,
Right.
or even a threat.
Okay.
And that celestial chalice we talked about earlier
Yeah.
could symbolize hope,
Mm-hmm.
healing,
Okay.
or a connection to the divine.
That's cool.
The way you present these floating items,
Yeah.
the language you use,
Mhm.
the context you provide,
Yeah.
all of these contribute to the emotional response
Uh-huh.
that they evoke in the players.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And that emotional response can be just as powerful
Right.
as any mechanical effect.
Yeah.
It's what makes the players truly connect with your world
Mm-hmm.
and the stories that you're telling.
Definitely.
And remember,
Yeah.
the goal is to create a memorable and engaging experience.
Absolutely.
To take a seemingly simple concept, like a floating item,
Mm-hmm.
and transform it into something truly extraordinary.
Yeah, I love it.
So the next time you're planning your D&D campaign,
Okay.
think about how you can use floating items to enhance the story,
Mm-hmm.
challenge your players,
Yeah.
and create a world that feels truly magical.
Absolutely.
We want to give a big thank you to LitRPG Reads
Yeah.
and author Paul Bello
Mm-hmm.
for this fantastic article.
Yeah, it was a great article.
It's a great resource for anyone looking to add a touch of wonder and mystery to their games.
Definitely.
And to our listeners,
Yes.
we'd love to hear from you.
Yeah.
What kind of floating item would you create
Uh-huh.
for your own adventures?
Good question.
Share your ideas in the comments below.
Yeah, let us know. It's like you were saying, we really should think beyond those typical floating items.
Yeah.
It's easy to get stuck on swords or orbs or treasure chests.
Yeah, those are the things that we usually picture.
Yeah, but the article challenges us to be more creative.
Right.
Like, what about a floating tapestry?
Okay, tapestry.
Yeah, and it's like depicting scenes from the future.
Oh, that's cool.
Right.
Yeah.
Or what about a floating cauldron
Oh my God.
that's constantly bubbling with this strange iridescent liquid?
That's creepy.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, I like it.
And you don't know, is it going to grant you wishes, or is it a portal to another dimension?
Right, or is it just going to explode in your face?
Yeah, exactly. Who knows?
Yeah.
So the article's just saying, don't limit yourself.
Right.
The more creative you get with these floating items, the more memorable they're going to be for your players.
Exactly. And it's not just about the items themselves, it's about how you use them.
Yeah.
And the article gives some really cool suggestions.
Okay, like what?
Well, one thing it talks about is using floating items to create puzzles.
Oh, yeah. Puzzles are always fun.
Right, and think about it, a floating item instantly adds a layer of complexity to a puzzle.
How so?
Well, because now you have to factor in gravity.
Right.
Or the lack thereof.
Yeah.
So imagine a puzzle where you have to arrange a series of floating runes in the correct order to unlock a door.
Right.
But these runes are constantly shifting and leaving.
Oh, that's tricky.
Right.
Yeah.
And maybe they even repel each other.
Ooh.
So you have to use magic or maybe some kind of a special tool to manipulate them.
Interesting.
So it's not just a simple matter of putting them in the right order.
Right.
You have to actually physically interact with these runes.
And figure out how to overcome those forces.
Exactly.
That's a cool puzzle.
And the article gives another example.
Okay.
It talks about a floating prism.
A prism.
Yeah, it's called the celestial prism.
Okay.
And it refracts light
Uh-huh.
in all sorts of different colors.
Right.
And so the players have to figure out how to use this prism
Okay.
to unlock a hidden pathway or maybe reveal a secret message.
Interesting.
So you could have clues hidden throughout the dungeon that are only visible when you shine the light from this prism on them.
Oh, that's cool.
Right. Yeah, I like that a lot.
And so the players have to experiment with different angles and different colors of light to figure out the solution.
So it's a combination of a visual puzzle and a logic puzzle.
Exactly.
That's awesome.
And the article also talks about how you can use floating items to create traps.
Ooh, traps.
Yeah.
Those are always fun.
Especially for the dungeon master.
Yeah.
So imagine a floating orb that looks harmless enough, but when you get too close, it unleashes a magical blast.
Oh, wow.
Or maybe it teleports you to a different location.
Interesting.
Maybe it's a dangerous location.
Ooh.
Or maybe it's just a really inconvenient location.
Yeah. That's funny. The middle of a crowded marketplace.
In the middle of town.
Yeah.
Nobody expects that.
Exactly.
That's cool.
And the article also talks about how you can use floating items to create memorable encounters.
Okay. Encounter.
Yeah. So imagine a floating shield.
A shield. Okay.
That belongs to a long dead warrior.
Uh-huh.
And this shield is animated.
What do you mean animated?
It moves on its own.
Oh, wow.
And it attacks anyone who comes near its master's tomb.
So it's guarding the tomb.
Exactly.
Awesome.
And maybe the players have to figure out a way to defeat the shield.
Okay.
Without actually destroying it.
Ooh, that's tricky.
Right.
Yeah.
Because maybe the shield is actually a valuable artifact.
Right.
That they need for their quest.
So they got to find a way to disable it or something.
Exactly.
That's cool.
Or maybe they have to appease the spirit of the warrior.
Okay.
Who is bound to the shield.
Interesting.
So there's all sorts of possibilities there.
Yeah, that's a really cool encounter.
And the article stresses that the key to using floating items effectively is to make them more than just objects.
Okay.
They should be extensions of the story.
Right.
They should have a purpose. And they should make the players think and feel.
That's what it's all about. So it's about tricking the player's senses a little bit.
Right.
Making them think that this object has weight even though it shouldn't.
Yeah, and it's that contrast
that
really makes it stand out.
Exactly.
Makes it memorable.
Wait a minute.
Yeah.
How is that even possible? That's awesome.
And this is something I found really interesting. The article talks about incorporating temperature into our descriptions.
Interesting.
What if that floating treasure chest radiated a subtle heat, hinting at the magical power within?
Ooh, that's a good idea.
Right.
Yeah, I like that.
Or imagine a floating mask that feels icy cold to the touch,
Oh, that's creepy.
as if it's drawing the warmth from your very soul.
Yeah, it's like draining your life force or something.
Exactly.
I like it.
And these details, it's not just about making it feel real.
Right.
It's also about foreshadowing
Uh,
or hinting at the object's true nature.
okay.
The article gives a great example of this with a floating amulet
Okay. An amulet.
that appears to be made of ordinary stone,
Mm-hmm.
but when a player touches it, it feels strangely warm
Okay.
and pulsates with a faint heartbeat.
Ooh, that's a little creepy.
Right. And it turns out
Yeah.
the amulet contains the soul of a trapped sorcerer.
Oh, wow.
So you can see how a seemingly simple detail like temperature
Yeah,
can add a whole new layer of intrigue and mystery
for sure.
to this object.
And like you said, foreshadowing.
Right.
Like, oh, what's going on here? Why is this thing warm?
And it makes the players question.
Mm,
It makes them want to investigate.
yeah, definitely.
We've talked a lot about the physical aspects
Yeah.
of these floating items,
Mhm.
but the article also encourages us to think about the emotional impact.
Oh, the emotional impact.
How do they make the players feel?
That's a good point.
And that's where symbolism comes in.
Okay, symbolism.
So like a floating sword
Mm-hmm.
can represent more than just a weapon.
Right.
It can be a symbol of power,
Yeah.
authority,
Mm-hmm.
or even a threat.
Okay.
That celestial chalice we talked about earlier
Yeah.
could symbolize hope,
Mm-hmm.
healing,
Hmm.
or a connection to the divine.
Interesting.
And the way you present these floating items, the
Mm.
language you use, the context you provide, all of these contribute to the emotional response
Right.
that they evoke in the players.
That makes sense.
And that emotional response
Uh-huh.
can be just as powerful
Oh, yeah.
as any mechanical effect.
For sure.
It's what makes the players truly connect
Mm-hmm.
with your world and the stories you're telling.
I agree.
And remember, the goal is to create a memorable and engaging experience.
Absolutely.
To take this seemingly simple concept,
Yeah.
like a floating item,
Uh-huh.
and transform it into something truly extraordinary.
Exactly.
So the next time you're planning your D&D campaign,
Mm-hmm.
think about how you can use floating items
Yeah.
to enhance the story,
Right.
challenge your players,
Uh-huh.
and create a world that feels truly magical.
Totally.
Big thanks to LitRPG Reads
Yeah.
and author Paul Bello for
Mm.
this fantastic article.
Great article.
It's a great resource for anyone looking to add a touch of wonder and mystery to their games.
For sure.
And to our listeners, we would love to hear from you. What kind of floating item would you create for your own adventures?
Yeah. Let us know.
Share your ideas in the comments below.
Yeah, we'd love to hear them.